Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we do it around here. We grab a stack of research and then we extract the most mind-blowing insights, and then we bring them right to you guys. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future deep dives. Today we are tackling a topic that is fascinating and unsettling in equal measure.
Yeah,
Brain organoids.
it really is remarkable what science can do these days. We're talking about three-dimensional clusters of human brain cells grown in a lab, and they mimic some of the functions of an actual human brain.
Okay, so I got to admit, tiny brains growing in a dish is both amazing and a little creepy. But let's start with the basics here. What are researchers actually doing with these brain organoids?
Well, one of the most promising applications is in disease research. Think about it. We can watch how diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's affect brain cells in real time without having to experiment on actual patients.
That's a game changer for medicine.
Yeah.
But I can already see where this is going. What happens when these organoids become so complex that they start exhibiting signs of consciousness? It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
It's a question that's keeping a lot of ethicists up at night. And it forces us to really confront the question, what is sentience anyway? Do we even have a clear definition of what it means for something to be conscious?
That's a great question. I think most people would say it's about being aware of yourself and your surroundings, but is it really that simple?
Not at all. One idea that's gaining traction is that sentience is tied to something called valence, the ability to experience things as positive or negative. It's not just about reacting to a stimulus, it's about feeling something as good or bad.
So it's not just about having a brain that functions. It's about having a brain that can actually, feel.
Exactly.
That adds a whole new layer of complexity to this discussion.
Absolutely.
And it raises the question, how can we even tell if an organoid is experiencing valence if it's actually feeling something?
Yeah.
It's not like we can just, ask it. Right. It's almost like we're venturing into uncharted territory here, both scientifically and ethically, right? And this is where things get really interesting, because some researchers believe that the key to sentience might lie in a very specific part of the brain.
You're talking about the brainstem rule.
Okay.
It's a fascinating idea that suggests the presence of a functioning brainstem, the part of the brain that regulates basic functions like breathing and heart rate, could be a strong indicator of sentience.
Hold on. So you're saying that even without the higher level thinking parts of the brain, a functioning brainstem alone might be enough for some level of conscious experience. Doesn't that make you wonder about how we define brain death?
It's a thought-provoking question, isn't it? And it has real-world implications for how we think about coma patients, for example. If the brainstem is so crucial for sentience, then maybe we need to rethink our assumptions about what it means for someone to be in a vegetative state.
Wow, that really challenges the assumption that consciousness is a human-only trait. If a brainstem alone is enough for some level of sentience, then wouldn't that apply to other animals too?
You're getting at a crucial point here. If we accept the brainstem rule, then it has major implications for how we view animal consciousness, and it raises some uncomfortable questions about our ethical obligations to creatures that we've traditionally considered less than sentient.
So my goldfish suddenly deserves more moral consideration.
Right.
I'm half joking, but this really does make you rethink our place in the animal kingdom. But it's not just about brainstems, right? There are other theories about how consciousness arises.
That's right. Some scientists believe that the brainstem might not be the only path to sentience. They point to the midbrain, specifically a structure called the periaqueductal gray, as crucial for subjective experience. It's involved in processing emotions and feelings.
Okay, so if the midbrain is so crucial, doesn't that upend how we think about animal consciousness? We're talking about a complete paradigm shift in our understanding of sentience.
Exactly. And it's a shift that has profound implications for how we treat animals, how we conduct research, and how we define our own humanity.
It's like we're on the verge of a scientific and ethical revolution. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's bring this back to brain organoids. If researchers are growing these increasingly complex systems, are there any safeguards in place to prevent them from accidentally creating something that's truly conscious?
It's a question that's at the forefront of discussions about the ethics of brain organoid research. Some researchers are proposing a sentience checklist to assess organoids for signs of consciousness.
A sentience checklist. What would that even look for? I mean, it's not like these organoids can just tell us if we're feeling something, right?
Of course not. It's a complex issue, but some researchers are proposing that we look for things like complex neural activity patterns,
Hmm.
the ability to learn and adapt to new information, and even the presence of integrated brain regions that might be involved in conscious processing. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle using indirect clues.
This is getting really interesting. It's like we're trying to define the boundaries of consciousness itself to understand what makes something more than just a collection of cells.
That's exactly what's so fascinating about this research. It's pushing us to confront some of the biggest questions about the nature of life, consciousness, and what it means to be human.
Well, I don't know about you, but my brain is already starting to feel a little overloaded, and we've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
Yeah, I know we haven't even touched on the mind-blowing concept of organoid intelligence yet. That's where things get really wild.
Oh, I know we're just getting started, but before we dive into that rabbit hole, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore the potential of combining human brain cells with computers and the ethical challenges of creating a whole new form of intelligence. Stay with us.
Okay, and we are back. Ready to go even deeper into the world of brain organoids and the ethical quandaries they present.
I am strapped in and ready for blast off. Last time we left off on this tantalizing cliffhanger.
Yeah?
Organoid Intelligence, or OI.
Yeah.
Combining human brain cells with computers just sounds like pure science fiction.
Yeah.
But apparently it's a field that's gaining some serious traction.
It is, and the potential is staggering. Think about it. We could harness the computational power of silicon,
Yeah.
combine it with the unique information processing capabilities of biological neurons. It's like merging the best of both worlds.
Okay, now my brain is officially doing backflips. What would this even look like in practice? Are we talking about like cyborgs with organoid brains? Is this how Skynet starts?
Maybe not cyborgs, at least not yet.
Okay.
But researchers are already experimenting with connecting brain organoids to computers using these things called microelectrode arrays.
Okay.
These are tiny grids of electrodes, can both record the electrical activity of the organoid and deliver electrical stimulation to it.
So it's like a two-way conversation between the organoid and the computer.
Mm-hmm.
The computer can listen to what the organoid is thinking and even talk back to it through electrical impulses.
That's the gist of it. And it opens up a whole new world of possibilities for understanding how the brain works, how it learns, and how it adapts. Imagine being able to decipher the neural code in real time to see how information is processed and stored in a living network of human brain cells.
Okay, now that is truly mind-blowing, but let's not forget the ethical elephant in the room.
Right.
If we're essentially creating hybrid systems that blend human brain power with AI, aren't we running the risk of creating something that could become sentient? Something that might even develop its own goals and desires?
It's a concern that's not taken lightly in the scientific community. Some experts are even drawing parallels to the debates surrounding artificial general intelligence, the idea of creating AI that's as intelligent and adaptable as a human being.
I can see the parallels. In both cases, we're talking about potentially creating a new form of intelligence, one that could have unforeseen consequences. It's a bit like opening Pandora's box. Once you unleash a new form of intelligence into the world, you can't put it back in.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to have these ethical conversations now before the technology advances too far. We need to establish clear guidelines and regulations for research in this area, and we need to involve the public in these discussions so it's not just a decision being made by scientists and policymakers behind closed doors.
I couldn't agree more. This isn't just about science. This is about the future of humanity. But let's put aside the existential anxieties for a moment and talk about some of the potential benefits of OI.
Sure.
It sounds like this technology could have some pretty incredible applications.
Oh, absolutely. For starters, OI could revolutionize the field of artificial intelligence. Traditional AI systems often struggle with tasks that require flexibility, creativity, and common sense, things that humans do effortlessly. But by incorporating human brain cells into the mix, we might be able to create AI systems that can learn and adapt in a much more human-like way.
So we could finally have AI that can understand sarcasm, write a decent screenplay, or beat me at a game of chess without making me feel completely intellectually inferior.
Ain't no promises on the chess part.
Right.
But you're getting at the core idea. OI could potentially create AI that can not only perform complex tasks, but also understand and respond to the nuances of human language, emotion, and behavior.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here.
Yeah.
But let's get practical. What are some real-world applications that could benefit from OI?
Well, medicine is a huge area.
Okay.
Imagine using OI to develop new drugs and therapies for neurological disorders. We could grow brain organoids that are personalized to a specific patient, carrying their genetic signature and the unique characteristics of their disease.
So you're saying we could have disease-in-a-dish models that allow us to test drugs and therapies in a way that's tailored to the individual patient.
Uh-huh.
That would be incredible for developing more effective and targeted treatments.
Exactly. And it's not just about treating diseases. OI could also be used to enhance our own cognitive abilities.
Wait, are you suggesting we could use OI to make ourselves smarter?
Yeah.
Like some kind of brain-boosting implant straight out of a cyberpunk novel?
Well, it's certainly a possibility that's being explored.
Wow.
Though it's still in the realm of speculation, there's a lot we still don't know about how the brain works, let alone how to safely and ethically interface it with technology.
Let's not forget the ethical dimension here. This is some pretty powerful stuff we're talking about.
Right.
But it's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is exciting, but it's also a bit daunting. As we delve deeper into the world of brain organoids and OI, we're going to encounter more and more ethical challenges.
No doubt about it, but I have a feeling we haven't even reached peak mind-blowing yet.
Yeah.
What else do we need to unpack?
Well, one area that's particularly fascinating and ethically fraught is the research being done with human-animal chimeras.
Chimeras. Like those mythical creatures with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent.
Not quite that dramatic, but you're on the right track. In the scientific context, a chimera is an organism that contains cells from 2 or more different species.
Okay.
And in this case, we're talking about combining human brain cells with the developing embryos of animals, typically mice or rats.
So scientists are actually creating animals with partially human brains. That's, wow, I don't even know what to say. This is some next level stuff. But why? What's the point of doing this kind of research?
The goal is to study how human brain cells interact with the cells of another species, to see if we can create more realistic models of human brain development and disease.
So if you want to study how a human brain develops, or how a disease like Alzheimer's affects the brain, you can't exactly experiment on a living human being, but you could potentially create a chimera with a partially human brain and study in a more controlled environment.
Exactly. It gives researchers a powerful tool for studying the human brain in a way that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, it also raises a whole host of ethical concerns.
No kidding. We're talking about blurring the lines between species in a way that feels almost unnatural. Are we creating animals that are partly human?
Right.
Do these chimeras have a different moral status than regular animals? These are heavy questions.
They are, and there's no easy answer. It's a complex ethical landscape that requires careful consideration of the potential benefits of the research, the potential risks to the animals involved, and the broader societal implications of creating these kinds of hybrid creatures.
It's almost like we're venturing into territory that's beyond our current ethical frameworks. We're going to need some serious philosophical heavy lifting to grapple with the implications of this kind of research.
I think you're right, and it's not just philosophers who need to be involved in this conversation. It's going to require input from scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the public at large.
It's a reminder that science doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has the power to reshape our world. But it's up to us to ensure that it's used for good and not for ill.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for another break. When we come back, we'll explore one of the most mind-bending applications of brain organoid technology, the study of ancient DNA.
Ancient DNA. Don't go anywhere, deep divers. This is about to get seriously wild. Okay, deep divers, I hope you got your thinking caps on because we are about to venture into territory that's both mind-boggling and ethically complex.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were teasing this idea of using brain organoids to study ancient DNA. And I have to admit, I am picturing like a woolly mammoth stampede through a lab.
Haha. Well, maybe not a stampede, but the reality is just as astonishing. We're talking about using brain organoids to study the brains of Neanderthals and other extinct human relatives.
Now, I'm no geneticist, but wouldn't you need like actual brain tissue to do that? And isn't that long gone after thousands of years?
You'd think so, right? But that's where the magic of stem cell technology comes in. Scientists can take ancient DNA that's been extracted from fossils, like bone fragments, and use it to create these things called induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs.
So we're talking about taking DNA that's like tens of thousands of years old and turning back the clock to create stem cells.
Yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And once you have those stem cells, you can coax them to develop into brain organoids that carry the genetic blueprint of our ancient ancestors.
So you're saying we can actually grow mini brains in a dish that are genetically similar to the brains of Neanderthals.
Uh-huh.
That's incredible. But how do we even know that these organoids are accurately representing the brains of our ancient ancestors? It's not like we can pull up a Neanderthal brain scan for comparison.
That's a great point. We don't have perfectly preserved Neanderthal brains to compare to, but scientists use a combination of techniques to make sure they're on the right track. They can compare the organoids to the brains of modern humans and other primates looking for similarities and differences. They can also study the fossil record, things like skull shape and size, to get clues about brain structure.
It's like piecing together a puzzle, using every bit of evidence we have to try and reconstruct the brains of our long-lost relatives. But why go through all this trouble?
Yeah.
What can we learn from studying the brains of our ancient ancestors?
Oh, so much. For one thing, it helps us understand the evolutionary journey that led to the modern human brain. By comparing the organoids of different human species, we can trace the changes that happened over time, seeing which features were inherited from our ancestors and which ones evolved more recently.
So it's like creating a family tree of the human brain, tracing the branches back through time to understand where we came from.
Exactly, and this knowledge can shed light on some of the unique capabilities of the human brain, like our capacity for language abstract thought and those complex social interactions that make us, well, human.
It's fascinating to think we can, peer into the minds of our ancestors in this way. But I can't help but wonder if there are any ethical concerns about growing brain organoids from ancient DNA. Is there a risk of accidentally creating a being with a Neanderthal consciousness?
That's a question that's definitely on the minds of ethicists and researchers. While the idea of a Neanderthal consciousness emerging from an organoid is fascinating, it's important to remember that we're talking about extremely simplified models of a brain.
So you're saying it's highly unlikely that we're going to have a Neanderthal, walking around anytime soon?
Highly unlikely. These organoids, while complex, lack the sensory inputs and interactions with the environment that are crucial for developing anything resembling a human-level consciousness, let alone a Neanderthal one.
That's a bit of a relief, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But it still makes you think about the incredible power of this technology and the responsibility that comes with it.
Absolutely. This is just one example of how brain organoid research is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible, both scientifically and ethically. And as we continue to explore the frontiers of brain science, we need to be mindful of the potential consequences and engage in these critical ethical conversations every step of the way.
Well said. Okay, so we've got all these potential benefits, but also this whole Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas. So the big question is, do the benefits outweigh the risks?
Well, that's the debate that everyone's having right now, and there are no easy answers. On the one hand, think about the potential for medical breakthroughs, like we could use brain organoids to test new drugs for neurological diseases, study the effects of toxins on the developing brain, even gain insights into the causes of autism and schizophrenia.
That's incredible. It could totally revolutionize medicine as we know it.
It really could. And some researchers are even looking into using brain organoids for biocomputing.
Yeah.
Imagine harnessing the processing power of a biological brain to create a whole new generation of computers.
Whoa, okay, that's straight out of science fiction, but I can see how the potential benefits are huge.
They are, but the ethical considerations are just as significant. We're essentially talking about creating a whole new class of beings potentially with feelings and rights.
That's a lot to wrap our heads around. So what steps can we take to navigate all of this responsibly?
Well, that's what we're going to explore next.
Okay, so we've explored this incredible potential of brain organoids and kind of the ethical earthquake that they're causing. But how do we actually move forward responsibly? Where do we even start to draw the lines?
Yeah, it's a huge task, right? And there's no easy answer or one single roadmap, but some researchers and ethicists are starting to propose some concrete steps that we could take to navigate this uncharted territory.
Okay, so give us some hope here. What are some of these steps?
Well, one of the most important things is to establish clear guidelines for research, like almost a code of conduct for scientists who are working with brain organoids.
So like a Hippocratic oath, but for brain organoid researchers.
Exactly. And these guidelines could address things like how to minimize potential suffering, how to ensure humane treatment of these organoids, and also how to define the thresholds for when an organoid might be considered a sentience candidate and require additional ethical safeguards.
That makes sense, but how do we actually figure out those thresholds. It's not like we can just ask an organoid, hey, are you feeling sentient today?
Haha, right. It's tricky. But there are some promising ways that are being developed to assess potential sentience. Like some researchers are exploring ways to measure brain activity in organoids, looking for patterns of activity that resemble those that we see in humans and animals that are associated with consciousness.
So like looking for specific brainwave patterns that might indicate a certain level of awareness.
Exactly. And we can also look at behavioral indicators, like if an organoid consistently responds to stimuli in a way that suggests pain or distress, or if it starts to exhibit complex behaviors that go beyond just simple reflexes. Those would be red flags that we need to investigate further.
Wow, it's like we're playing detective trying to crack the code of consciousness.
Yeah, in a way it is. And it's a really high stakes game because the consequences of misinterpreting the evidence could be huge. Like, if we underestimate the sentience of these organoids, we risk committing some pretty serious ethical violations.
It's a heavy burden to carry, knowing that our actions could have such profound implications.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to have these open and honest conversations about these issues, not just within the scientific community, but with the public as well.
So we need to move beyond just the scientists in the lab and bring these conversations out into the open.
Yeah, public engagement is crucial. We need to involve diverse voices, perspectives, and values in shaping the future of this research. At the end of the day, these are questions that impact all of humanity.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that science doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's all connected to these ethical and societal and even philosophical considerations.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's up to all of us to decide how far we're willing to go in our quest to understand the brain and the nature of consciousness. Like, we need to weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks and decide what kind of future we want to create.
This has been a truly mind-bending deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, but I also have even more questions now than I did before we started.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, that's kind of the beauty of knowledge, isn't it? It often leads to more questions than answers. It's so true. Well, deep divers, we hope this episode has sparked your curiosity and maybe even a little bit of healthy existential dread.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations of the most fascinating and sometimes unsettling frontiers of science and technology.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.